lift from the bottom, everybody rises. Yeah. When we lift from the bottom, everybody rises. See, they think that we're coming to be liberated, but we're coming to liberate them for the ways that they oppress us. Give it up for Jamel.
We're gonna take you there.
Yes.
It's coming.
To liberate you from all the ways you hold us down, yeah. When you hurt me, you hurt you too. When you free me, you free yourself. When you live from the bottom, everybody rises, yeah, yeah. When you live from the bottom, everybody rises, we have come to liberate you from all the ways you hold us down. Now you see, when you hurt me, you hurt you too.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yes. Woo.
When you free me, you free yourself. David hit me with the note. When you lift from the bottom, everybody rises.
Yay.
When you lift from the bottom, everybody rises. Y'all sing it one time.
Yes. Yes.
You got it? Figured it out. Yeah.
Hey, hey, hey.
From the bottom, oh, no, 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 no. Oh. We have come to liberate you from all the ways you hold us down. See, when you hurt me, you hurt you too. When you free me, you free yourself. Oh, listen. When you lift from the bottom, everybody rises.
Everybody rises.
When you lift from the bottom,
Lift from the bottom.
everybody rises. Listen. We need air that we can breathe.
We need air that we can breathe.
We need water we can drink.
We need
water.
we can drink.
Now you might say that we are weak.
You might say that we are weak.
But we are stronger than you think. When you lift from the bottom, everybody rises. When you lift from the bottom, everybody rises.
Everybody rises.
Keep on rising.
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 I said keep on rising.
Keep on rising.
Keep on rising.
Keep on
I
rising.
said keep on rising.
Keep on
I
rising.
said keep on rising. Keep on rising. Oh.
the bottom, everybody rises. When you live from the bottom, everybody rises.
You know, if you hold on, you've been working, even through the pandemic, we've been working. We've been doing the best we could do, right? Doing the best we could do with what we have. But I'm here to tell you, I promise you, that if you hold on just a little while longer, I know justice is coming soon. Come on, pump your fist if you know justice is coming soon. It's Katina Rosemont.
Hold on just a little while longer.
Yeah.
Hold on just a little while longer. justice coming soon. Help me sing it. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. I know justice is coming soon. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. Hold on, just a little while longer. I know justice is coming soon. So pray on just a little while longer. Pray on just a little Come on, Freddie. Come on, Freddie. Just a little while longer. You need to pray a little longer. Don't give up, don't give up, no. A little longer. Justice day coming just a little while longer. Hold on. Just a little while longer. Hold on. Just a little while longer. I know justice is coming soon. So hold on. Just a little while longer.
that with everything I have in me. Come on, crank up that round, that last part. Come on, come on, come on.
I know justice is coming.
Do you believe it? Do you believe it?
I know justice is coming soon. I know justice is coming.
I know you got your mask on, but behind that singing.
I know justice is coming.
Here we go, last time.
I know justice is coming
All right, y'all. This is our last song. All right. Now for this one, you might just have to spread apart just a little bit because we want you to take your mask down just to sing this verse, just to sing the response back to us. And the song is, "We don't want war. We want justice. Justice will bring about peace. We want to live in a world without fear. Hear us, war cease, war cease." We just want you to know what we're saying. Tell me why people are dying at the hands of police. Why can't we live in a world without fear? Hear us, war cease, war cease. Come on, y'all, let's get real hyped on this one.
Woo, woo, woo.
Now, when we call, we want you to respond. Here we go. We don't want war, we want justice. Justice will bring about peace. We want to live in a world without fear. Hear us, war cease, war cease. Why people are dying at the hands of police. Why can't we live in a world without fear? Hear us, war cease, war cease. Come on and respond.
Those signs in the air. Come on, band, give it to me one more time.
Oh, 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 oh.
shout. Say forward together. Forward together. Forward together. We already have over 100,000 people checking us out. Give them a shout. We welcome you to the launch of the Mass Poor People's Low-Wage Assembly and Moral March on Washington, D.C., June 18, 2022. Today we start 365 days of mobilization to change this nation. And because we are Moral Monday, because we are the Poor People's Campaign, and I greet you on behalf of also Reverend Dr. Leah Steele Harris. Check out the screen. Part of us, this is virtual, part of it is live, but first thing we always do is a roll call from the stage. And before the band goes off the stage, give them a big hand. Come on, give them a big scream. Miss Yara Allen, the Street Genie Freddie Green, and all of the accompaniment. Check out your screens.
In 2018, there were 140 million Americans who were poor or one emergency away from economic ruin.
Across the country, in communities and forgotten places, poor people and low-wage workers of different races, genders, abilities, sexualities, and faiths are building a moral fusion movement.
We are coming together across all the lines that divide us to restructure and lift our society from the bottom up.
We delivered our demands.
We demand.
We demand.
We demand.
We demand.
Reinvestment in and the expansion of public housing, ensuring that all have a decent house to live in and a place to call home.
We engaged in nonviolent civil disobedience.
To follow that breaking news in Albany, where a large group of protesters have moved back into the street.
Today's Poor People's Campaign rally, part of simultaneous rallies in more than 30 states and Washington, D.C.
Over the past 5 weeks, nearly 2,000 people have been arrested in what organizers describe as the most expansive wave of nonviolent direct action this century.
Our backs are against the wall, and we got no choice but to push.
Because it's crucial that we make ourselves heard.
For a country this rich to have so many people poor, it's immoral and it's wrong.
We testified on Capitol Hill.
Never before have impacted leaders gotten to march into Congress and present a budget.
We brought a full budget request and a movement behind it.
During the pandemic, we organized the largest social media gathering of the poor in U.S. history.
We mobilized, we organized, we registered, and we educated poor voters across the country.
And we helped bring poverty to the national agenda.
Something that hasn't come up very much tonight, but deserves a lot of attention: poverty. You know, the Poor People's Campaign is marching on Iowa right now, calling on us to talk about this issue more.
Ending poverty will not just be an aspiration. It will be a theory of change to build a new economy that includes everyone.
Our country now stands at a tipping point. We can realize a third Reconstruction to fully address poverty and low wages from the bottom up.
Today we say to poor people, Mr. Speaker, we see you and we will eradicate poverty in our country with you.
No democracy can claim to be strong when 140 million people, or 43% of its people, are poor and low wealth.
Now, we're organizing to realize a third Reconstruction. It's time to fully address poverty and low wages from the bottom up. We are fighting forward together.
And not one step back.
I want you to know that when hands that once picked cotton join hands of Latinos, join hands of progressive whites, join faith hands and labor hands and Asian hands and Native American hands and poor hands and wealthy hands with a conscience and gay hands and straight hands and trans hands and Christian hands and Jewish hands and Muslim hands and Hindu hands and Buddhist hands, when we all get together, We are an instrument of redemption. When we join hands, we can revive and make sure that the promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and equal protection under the law is never taken away from anybody. So I got a question. Are the rejected ready to revive and declare that this land is your land, this land is my land, this land is our land, and together from the State House to the White House, the rejected are going to demand that this nation never give up on being one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to everyone here in Halifax Hall, here in Raleigh. Welcome to all the people joining online, across the country, across the world, to this powerful uprising. This mass poor people's and low-wage workers assembly, where we're launching 365 days of fighting forward. Forward together, not one step back. We are here because people, poor people, low-wage workers, unpaid care workers, sub-minimum wage workers, homeless families, welfare rights leaders, healthcare workers who can't even afford healthcare. Because family farmers, teachers, veterans, folks that have lost so much in COVID, and to the pandemics of racism and poverty that preceded. All kinds of beautiful, powerful people are rising up. We're rising up to demonstrate the compelling power that we, the 140 million poor and low-income people in this, the richest country in the world, have. The power that we have to reconstruct society from the bottom up. And we're here to commit to fighting forward for these 365 days. And until everyone is fed, until everyone has decent housing, until everyone is paid living wages and are able to enjoy the fruits of our labor, until Black lives matter, Indigenous lives matter, until we can end countless wars, until we ensure clean water and clean land and clean air for absolutely everyone. Yes. We are committed to fighting forward for a moral march on Washington. We know that when forces of regression, forces that want to deny people the right to vote, forces that blame the poor for poverty rather than a poverty-producing system, forces that pay lip service to addressing injustice but refuse to raise wages or expand health care, or who decide to compromise with people's lives and the infrastructure of our communities. When such forces of regression sow violence and inequality and division, moral movements led by those most directly impacted by injustice, banding together with people from all walks of life, these movements arise. They build a better world. They make a difference. And I'm here to let you know that we are making a difference. People are organizing in more than 45 states across this country. Hundreds of partner organizations are joining forces together. Thousands of faith leaders from dozens of different faith traditions are making a clarion call for justice. This movement is putting pressure, it's persisting, and because of this, poverty is on the national agenda for the first time in over a generation. Because poor people and moral leaders and clergy and activists and organizers and advocates are mobilizing and organizing and educating and registering people for a movement that votes, a fusion movement is growing. It's gaining strength. And we're here. And we're organized. Congressional leaders have introduced a resolution in the House of Representatives calling for a third Reconstruction, fully addressing poverty and low wages from the bottom up. Inspired by this Poor People's Campaign, inspired by the commitment and the clarity and the capacity and the connection of poor and low-wealth people leading this movement, committed to building and deepening the resolve this nation needs to become a more perfect union. This movement is made up of moms whose water has been turned off, whose children are being taken away, who cry out, "Take away our poverty, not our children." This movement is made of families who have lost children to the lack of health care, who have wailed that their children are no more, but are committed to fighting until all have the right to live. It's made up of grandparents in Cancer Alley, Louisiana, family farmers in Kansas, border communities in Texas, police brutality activists in St. Louis who are crying out, everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. Because everybody's got a right to live. Poverty will not always be with us. Racism and violence and division is not inevitable. We can save the earth. We can end the militarization of our communities and the world. We can reject the false narratives of Christian nationalism, of white supremacy. Because this movement, this Poor People's Campaign, is moving forward together, not one step back. Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Liz. And thank you, Bishop Barbara, who will close us out tonight in a powerful way. Those of you here in Raleigh and those of you online all over the country, you don't want to miss a moment. Stay with us tonight. I greet you tonight in the name of the 140 million poor and low-wealth people and low-wage workers in this country. We stand in the name of those tonight who struggle to make ends meet in the wealthiest nation in the world, denied a living wage, called essential workers, but are denied the essentials to do their work. We stand tonight in the name of those who've been denied health care, denied voting rights, denied civil rights, denied human rights, denied clean air and clean water, denied the rights of this democracy. We stand tonight in their names on our way for the next, fighting forward for the next 365 days to June 18, 2022. June 18, 2022, fighting forward. People have asked, why do you protest? Why do you march? Why do you raise your voices? Why do you keep showing up in places like this? Why the Poor People's Campaign? Why the Third Reconstruction? Well, I tell you why. You ask such good questions. We are here because we know none of us are free until all of us are free. We're here because we know that there is no scarcity in this land. The only scarcity is the moral will to do what's right. We're here because we know that when you lift from the bottom, everybody rises. We're here because we know everybody has a right to live. And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. And so I greet you tonight, and I say to you tonight, my sisters and brothers, forward together. Forward together. Forward together.
We raise our voices with love and lament, praise and protest, truth-telling and prophetic witness. We boldly declare, in the face of systemic racism, poverty, ecological devastation, a war-based economy, and a distorted moral narrative of religious nationalism, that silence is betrayal. Somebody's hurting our family, and it's gone on for too long.
And we won't be silent anymore.
We come with many names for the holy: God, Allah, Great Spirit, Brahma, and those too sacred to voice. We are called by different teachers: Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Moses. We affirm the voice of each human endowed with rights and recognition. Somebody's hurting our family, and it's gone on far too long.
And we won't be silent anymore. Racism is the virus that tears at our humanity, infects our systems, and festers within the great democratic experiment that is America. We remember the 700 people who died each day from poverty in this country before COVID. We pray that we would find a new way, creating an economy of interdependence. Somebody's hurting our family, and it's gone on far too long, and we won't be silent anymore.
As we cut at earth, we hurt the spirit of river, soil, mountain, and tree. There is enough for everyone to live free, but there is not enough for corporate greed. We pray with our policy demands, with solidarity strikes, with movements for farmers, for public health workers, for indigenous struggle, for sacred land, for mothers fighting for water. Somebody's hurting our family, and it's gone on far too long.
And we won't be silent anymore.
We lament a nation addicted to war, economically dependent on violence, foreign and domestic. We can never address the suffering of God's people if we spend over half of our national budget on the military, lining the pockets of corporations and sacrificing the lives of our young people. Let us study war no more. Somebody's been hurting our family, and it's gone on far too long.
And we won't be silent anymore.
With thanksgiving in our hearts, we remember those who laid the foundation and dreamed us to this moment and this movement. For Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, John Brown, Harriet Tubman, Lucretia Mott, Sitting Bull, for A. Philip Randolph, Fannie Lou Hamer, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Ella Baker, Dorothy Day, Abraham Heschel, Sefer Chavez, Bayard Rustin, Polly Murray, for the elders still with us, for the children birthed in this movement now. We pray, Holy One, and ones of infinite name and reach. Thank you for the courage of our people in the streets today. Lift up brave leaders to organize in our communities. And we, like the ones before, are now the ones we've been waiting for. Listen, somebody has been wounding and hurting our children, and we won't be silent anymore.
Let's give it up for our moral leaders. We have Reverend Jimmy Hawkins, Rabbi Judy Schindler, Pastor Shalise Overy, Reverend Hershey Millette Stevens, and Reverend Dr. James A. Forbes, Sr.
Poor People's Campaign, National Call for More Revival. Let me hear you make some noise. Oh, come on, we got to do better than that. We coming here today in person and all across the country.
Right.
Come on, via social media, make some noise.
Come on.
Woo! That's right, that's right. And while we are here coming together in person, I got one thing I want to ask. We want to make sure that we remember this date. So, everybody pull out your phones, pull out your phones. We need everybody pull out your phones. What we getting ready to do is, you're going to tap your neighbor, give him one of them church elbows, say, neighbor, I'm glad to see you.
I'm glad to see you.
Let's take a picture.
Let's take a picture.
Say, neighbor,
Neighbor,
I'm glad to see you.
I'm glad to see you.
Let's take a picture. Kaz, let's take a picture. Now, if you took that picture, make some noise, North Carolina. Poor People's Campaign, all across the country. Make sure that you all post that on social media. It's thousands of us viewing together right now in this space. So one more time, make some noise for yourselves. Poor People's Campaign. Now we're getting ready to transition to voting rights. So let us welcome our ancestor, Rosanelle Eaton, with the video, followed by her daughter, Miss Arminta Eden. Come on, make some noise.
When they announced something about some fraud, I said, why they keep lying? Because I didn't plan to march. I want heels out on my shoes. You got to open up your mouth and be a committee of one. Say, we the people. 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 Say, stand up. Stand up. Fired up. Fired up. Stand up. Stand up. Fired up. Fired up. Thank you so much.
Oh, my friends, we are here today, back on this same mall, fighting the good fight for justice and freedom for all poor people in the United States and in this state. You sometimes wonder, why do we have to do this over and over again? We are wise enough to know that it's not Democrat versus Republican. It is right versus wrong. While our demands may seem to fall on deaf ears, we know that we must continue to press on and not get weary in well-doing on working for the distressed, depressed, and suppressed. My dearly departed mother, Rosanelle Eaton, which you just saw, never got tired of standing up for voting rights since the time she was 21 years old, when she had to recite the preamble to the Constitution of the United States of America in order to even register to vote. Every Moral Monday, my mother was out here with us on this mall, fighting for us, encouraging us, and even going to jail with us at the age of 92. She even went further. She sued Governor McCrory and the North Carolina Board of Elections to overturn the voter ID laws so that we may continue to vote freely. She stayed fed up and fired up until the very end. We are not fools. We know that these so-called voter integrity laws are not about voter integrity. We know that these laws are only designed to keep poor people, black people, and brown people from the polls to vote by cutting back early voting, cutting polling locations, cutting back hours for souls to the polls with special ID requirements, and even prohibiting us from giving a person a glass of water while they're standing in line to vote. It's shame, shame on them. Even though they try to wear us down and crush our hope, we must remember that the victory is not given to the swift, nor to the strong, but those who endure to the end. Thank you.
And to continue to talk about saving our democracy and voting rights, from Jackson, Mississippi, we got Benny Ivy.
Hello, man. First and foremost, thank you guys for inviting me here. It's a pleasure, and it's an honor to be working beside such great people for such a great cause. I was raised between South Jackson and Rankin County, Mississippi all my life, dirt poor, raised by drug addicts and outlaws. I quit school and rode around with my uncle and my brother at age 15 so that we could break into houses and steal anything that wasn't tied down so that my family could smoke crack and do other hard drugs. I was a gang member at 15, looking for that security in my life that I didn't have at home. I was also a drug addict at 15 and a solid meth addict at age 16. I spent all my juvenile years in detention centers and training schools. I caught my first charge as an adult, aggravated assault and burglary charges, at 21, and I began a career in prison. From there, I was in and out of prison for the next 13 years, 11 of those years behind the walls of the Mississippi Department of Corrections. I never stood a chance at life. Not a chance. All my life, I lived the life that I was taught and conditioned to live. Just like so many other people, you never know what's going on in somebody's life. You never know what's going on behind closed doors, right? But after serving my time and transforming my mind and transforming my life, my voice still doesn't count. My voice still don't count because I cannot vote. I've been out of prison now for more than a decade. I've been clean off meth more than a decade. I've been out of the gangs more than a decade, and I still can't vote. I've accomplished many goals, including I'm a successful business owner here in Mississippi. I'm a prominent church member of my church. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a homeowner. I'm co-director of a credible messenger program here in the juvenile youth courts and in the communities in which we mentor young people to keep them from going down the same roads that I went down, and I still can't vote. So my question is this: what more do I need to do to prove that my voice is just as valuable as anyone else's? What more do I need to do to prove myself to the powers that be that my voice is important? My voice is valuable, and I should be able to express myself in the voting polls as well as anywhere else. God bless y'all. God bless this movement. Thank y'all for having me on here tonight.
All right.
Thank you so much, Benny. We know that voting suppression affects everybody.
That's right.
Not black, not brown, everybody.
Yes, right.
And we are not going to stand for it. So the next we're going to hear about voting rights and the champions of it. Let's hear this video.
In studying the history of the massive resistance to Brown versus Board of Education in the 1950s, I happened on the trail that led to the current attacks on our democracy. And in fact, what I discovered was a deliberate, very calculated, very cold-eyed, clear strategy to shackle our democracy. So all that we are seeing now, all that's happening across the states, is not simply the result of Donald Trump. And I know many of you know this because you know the racism on which it all depends goes way, way back in our country. But the actual strategy of rigging the rules really started coming together in the late 1990s, and then they kind of hit the ground running, particularly after the election of President Obama. But even before that, they were laying the groundwork. So it's absolutely critical that mobilizations like this take place and that we push as hard as we can to end the Jim Crow filibuster and to free democracy from these shackles so that we can do all the wonderful and important things the vast majority supports and has wanted to see done for so long.
So after the inauguration of the new presidency in the United States, we have seen more than 389 restrictive bills introduced in 48 states in the 2021 legislative session. 14 states have now passed 22 bills targeting voter access, and that's just the beginning. We are in the middle of this fight, state by state, including here in North Carolina. At the same time, we're also seeing democracy suppression bills targeting election workers, election certification processes. So far, we have seen 216 bills across the country introduced that would allow state legislatures to politicize, criminalize, or interfere with elections. This is the fight that the federal government has to take up alongside the people who state by state are standing up and saying, not in our name, we have a voice and we want our voice to be heard.
And the truth is that, one, we not only are we sort of witnessing a civil war amongst one of the major parties in our country, but in fact, some have argued that it's descended into essentially the Republican crime syndicate. And that in the marketplace of ideas, fewer and fewer people are buying what they're selling. And the only way for them to continue to hold on to power is if they cheat. It is absolutely clear to me that if you are a climate activist or voter or donor, if you are an education activist, voter or donor, police reform, reproductive justice, that all of those things are important, and we all need your energy, your passion, your organizing around those issues. And none of it matters if we are not able to protect and preserve the right to vote. And so no one ever said that it was going to be easy. No one ever said that our march towards a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multilingual, multi-generational sort of plurality, majority, was going to be easy and that white supremacy was going to die quietly.
But one thing I think we don't pay enough attention to, this political right is deathly afraid of the new generation because they understand that this is the most diverse generation. It's a generation that knows the economy is not working for the vast majority. As a friend of mine says, this is the generation we've been waiting for, right? They are incredible.
I am optimistic. I am optimistic about what is ahead. And I'm optimistic because I see what we have just been through and that the frontline communities all across this country who have historically felt the burdens of racial discrimination, inequities in our economic system, the climate change crisis, and other historic inequalities have been standing up and saying, we are not just moving to participate in our elections in historic numbers. We are moving from being governed to governing. This is a transformative moment in our country's history. And we believe that if we invest in our democracy now, we can create a country that will lift up to meet the promise of past generations that have laid so much on the line for us to be able to be here and be free with one another speaking these words today.
So we're going to now hear a special message. Let's look to the video.
From Barbara, we've been together to commemorate tragedies, as we were in Tulsa. We've been together to celebrate victories. But I don't think we've ever been together at a time of such opportunity to deliver dignity for our nation's poor and low-wage workers and make ending poverty not just an aspiration, but a theory of change. And I want to thank everyone for joining this assembly, for reminding us that we all created an image of God. That we all have the right to economic opportunity, to health care, to clean air, water, and the right to vote. With our advocacy, we're translating our shared prayers into policy and building our economy from the bottom up and the middle out. You know, through the American Rescue Plan, we've cut hunger by 1/4, and we're on track to cutting child poverty in half. We know it's not enough just to build back from this pandemic, the devastation it's caused for the most vulnerable among us. We have to build back better than before, with millions of jobs that deliver dignity, a $15 minimum wage, affordable housing, universal pre-K, tuition-free community college. We need to build worker power through organization and collective bargaining and heed the cry for racial justice some 400 years in the making. Rev, at my inaugural prayer service, you reminded us that only by being, quote, repairers of the breach can we bring revival. Vice President Harris and I will keep working with you and your Poor People's Campaign to answer that clarion moral call. God bless you all and your urgent work.
All right. We're going to continue hearing from those impacted. We're going to now hear from Alicia Cool, coming from Santa Cruz Homeless Union. Alicia?
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. On behalf of the National Union of the Homeless, my family and I live in an RV in a city where an all-out war has been declared on the unhoused. We are those with sub-minimum wage jobs who can't afford sky-high rents, those with disabilities, those who have been turned out of their homes because they are gay or the victims of domestic violence, those who will soon be on the street when the eviction moratoriums come to an end. When COVID-19 hit, the Homeless Union organized Project Survival, bringing food, medical care, and life-saving essentials to the people. We went to court and got federal injunctions to stop police from breaking up hundreds of encampments. We showed that we're homeless, not helpless.
That's right.
Homelessness is just the most visible expression of the deepening poverty and affordable housing crisis millions of Americans are facing. Whether they are doubled up with other families, herded into shelters, squatted in boarded up buildings, or paying outrageous fees in weekly rate motels. Our union fights for day-to-day survival, but we are about ending homelessness. So we join you in fighting for a new third Reconstruction in America, for an America where no one has to go without the basic necessities of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alicia. The next voices you're going to hear is from Reverend Latia Frazier, Tammy Rojas, and Dr. Viviana Martinez Bianchi. Reverend Frazier.
People with disabilities or pre-existing conditions often get left out of healthcare plans, civil rights legislation, employment, and housing. We are often left out of sight and off of people's minds. The truth is, people with disabilities are the fastest growing minority group, and because of COVID-related health complications, many more people are and will become a part of the disability community. We live in a society where people with disabilities are made for and are often on the fringes of society. In the Christian tradition, Jesus had a lot to say about that. People with disabilities are not the problem that needs healing. but it is the society that shuts people with disabilities out from being full participants in all aspects of society and therefore are made poor and dispossessed that needs restructuring. The Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, is calling for a third reconstruction because when you lift people with disabilities up, everybody rises. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Fraser. Tammy.
Hello, my name is Tammy Rojas. I'm a coordinator with Put People First PA and the National Union of the Homeless. I live in Lancaster, a rural county in Pennsylvania. I have been poor and held low-wage jobs and never had decent health care for the majority of my life. I contracted COVID-19 at the end of January. My Penn Medicine doctor gave me the runaround about getting a COVID-19 test, so I had to get a test through other means, and I've had to fight Penn Medicine for the health care treatment I've needed ever since. I'm still dealing with lingering effects since contracting the virus. My lung capacity has changed, and I still have moments of extreme fatigue and COVID fog brain. During this pandemic, Lancaster County decided to spend resources on building a new prison instead of saving a hospital from closure. That's how wrong our priorities are, not just in my county, but at every level of our government. We have made some progress in changing the national conversation on poverty, but we have to realize that we cannot end poverty without enacting universal health care. Health care is a human right that must be guaranteed to everyone. Millions more of us are facing serious health conditions because we contracted the COVID-19 virus. Congress must make enacting universal health care a priority. Thank you.
Just before the next video, the speaker, I wasn't going to say much right now, but I want everybody to raise your hand that wants the nation to hear us. Now I got to ask you a tough question, but it's a movement question. How do we expect them to hear us if we're not listening to each other? If we're talking and on our cell phones and having conversations? You see, this is not a picnic. This is serious business. So I need everybody, if you're with us, unless you're the choir or on the stage and you're in the back behind the TV screens, to go in front of the TV screen. And if you need to get in the shade, that's fine. But millions of people are tuned in now, and if they see you slapping high fives, not when somebody has done something good and just jibber-jabbing, then that will make them think we're not serious. So even if you're in the shade, because if we can't pay attention to our own people for 2.5 hours, how are we going to expect this nation that needs to be reconstructed to listen to us? If I'm right about it, raise your hand. If you ain't mad with nobody but the devil, raise your hand. Now check your neighbor and say, neighbor, we can't make them listen.
We can't make them listen
if we don't listen. So listen up. We need full attention. For 2.5. Can't you have full attention for 2.5 hours?
That's right.
Now let's give our next speaker a big hand. Come on. Give me a little music. Give me a music applause. Give me a music applause. Bring on every speaker like that. I know it's hot, but folk that's living in the street are hotter than this. People without health care are hotter than this. People without living wages are hotter than this. And I'd rather be hot. In fact, the truth of the matter is, I'd rather die in the street than to live and not be fighting for justice. So let's be one people today, all right?
In the United States today, many people bear a disproportionate burden of disease.
One moment. Center mic, please. Center mic. Try it again.
In the United States today, many people bear a disproportionate burden of disease, premature death, and higher rates of pain and suffering. Black men are 70% more likely to die from a stroke as compared to non-Hispanic white men. Black mothers have 3 times higher maternal mortality than white mothers. Out of every 1,000 live births, we will lose 11 black babies, twice as many as white babies. Hispanics have a 50% higher death rate from diabetes and are more likely to be without health insurance. The rate of infant mortality for indigenous Americans is 60% higher than those for white kids. People of color have had higher rates of infection, hospitalization, and death due to COVID-19, yet they are less likely than white people to have received a COVID-19 vaccine. Rural Americans, farm workers, immigrants,